This is a video for Chapter 13, Derived Classes, and in order to save time, I've already created a base class and a main program that uses it. It's a very simple definition. Hotel.h is the header file. You can see the class definition of hotel, the constructors, the set room count and get room count, and then we're using a void function to print the number of rooms. So the build out is here, and again, as I said, the default constructor initializes room count to 0. A number is passed in the other constructor, and then we have our set and get and print. In the main program, hotel.h has been included, and I've instantiated a Huntsville object where it's passing the 2300 into one of the constructors. The Birmingham hotel object actually will get a value of 0 for room count in the default constructor. And then we're just going to ask the user to enter the rooms for Birmingham and pass it through set rooms. And then we're going to print the rooms, and we're going to get the room counts and add them together. So I can run this. So you can see it execute, and we're going to put 5,000 in here for the Birmingham rooms, and of course Huntsville's total number of rooms is 2,300 because that was initialized when it was passed in, and then it simply shows the room counts for both and then totals the room counts for both locations. So now we're ready to start the derived class, which means adding another header file by adding a new item, header.h, and I'm going to call this one Hilton Hotels and add it to my project. I get an empty code window, so I'm ready to start my class definition for Hilton Hotels. And it's similar to doing the base class, except I want it to know, and this is how I let it know, that it is based on hotel, which indicates it's derived. And in my public section, I have a set distance function that's going to be passed an integer, which will be the miles actually, and then an integer function get distance to return the number of miles to my main program, and then a Boolean function called is walkable, which will return a Boolean value. And I don't have a private section, but rather a I have a private section in this one instead of a protected because it's not inherited by anything else. And only one member in this, and that is the variable distance. And that's the end of my class definition for my derived class. So now I'm ready to actually build the class. And the first one is set distance, which is past miles as its parameter. And all we're doing here is assigning our local variable distance equal to the value passed in through miles. So that's the end of that function. And then my get distance will just return the distance to the main program. Get distance. Return the distance. And then my last one is my Boolean function is walkable. Which will return a Boolean type based on an if statement. If the distance is less than 1 mile here, return true, else we just want to return false. And I don't need the else because if it's true, it's going to execute the return true and be out of the function. And if indeed that is false, then it drops down to this line to return false. So that's the end of this one. So now I have the build of my Hilton Hotel. So I've got to go back to main and actually make some changes here in the code. And this base code is on the S drive if you want to copy it. And you can also get a handout if you've come to class of the base code. So, and what we're doing as far as changing it here. So now I want to include my other header file, my Hilton Hotels. .h, and of course it's user defined, so it's in double quotes. I am going to change here where it says Hotel Birmingham. This is now going to be Hilton, an object of Hilton Hotels. It's still going to be Birmingham, but it's Hilton Hotels rather than just plain old hotel. And I've added miles here already because I'm going to use that in my code. And then after the Birmingham set room count, I want to add some space because these are where my new lines are going to go. I need to ask the user to input how far in miles the mall is. From the mall. And then I want to read in miles. And then I want to call the set distance function from the derived class. So Birmingham dot set distance, and I'm passing it miles. Then I'm going to use a cout, or an if statement rather, but I'm going to use my Boolean function with my object. Birmingham is walkable. So if Birmingham is walkable, if that's true, then what I want to do is to print out the mall is within walking distance. And then I'm going to print out my Huntsville information, then my Birmingham information, except that my header here just says Birmingham, so I'm going to change this to Birmingham Hilton since it is the other class. But the call to print rooms here is a call to the base class, and it automatically will handle that because Hilton Hotels is derived from the base class hotels, which means it inherits all those public and protected variables that are in the hotels class. So those are the only changes I need to make. So let's try building it and see what we get. See if I've typed correctly. Nope. I misspelled the word private. Try it again. And it worked that time. So I'm going to go back to the main program here and run the program. Again, enter the number of rooms for Birmingham. It's a Hilton, so we only have 2,500 rooms for the Hilton. Still a little much. How far is the Birmingham Hilton from the mall? 5 miles. Okay, there's my Huntsville room count, my Birmingham room count, and my total number of rooms for both locations. And it's not within walking distance because I made this very simple. I'm only printing here if the mall is within walking distance. I did not print a variable, a cout statement in case it wasn't. So it did execute properly. Now I can make some changes to that by adding an else, and it might be clear if I do this on separate lines, so that let's just copy and paste this. The mall is not within walking distance. The other change is I've got miles declared as an integer, and it might be better to have miles declared as a double so I could put in a fractional. So let me declare miles here as a double, and now let's see what happens when we run it. Total number of rooms available, we'll say 1,800. It's a big Hilton. How far is it from the mall? 0.5. The mall is within walking distance, and then my totals. So there's an example, a simple example of a derived class.